Hey everyone, welcome to Watch It, Paint It, and this episode of making miniatures moist and then letting them dry again. If for some reason you're unaware and haven't been following along with the channel because you're not subscribed, hit that subscribe button guys. Then you might not be aware that we worked with the Army Painter as part of their paint development team and worked on creating some brand new speed paint colours as part of that work. One of which is Blinding Light, a brand new white based speed paint available very soon. One of the reasons we created Blinding Light is because we loved all the original speed paints with this small exception of Holy White. I could never really get on with Holy White no matter how I applied it. So let's take the new Blinding Light and the original Holy White and battle them together and find out which we prefer. While we're at it, we'll also throw in the contrast white because I guess it's getting a little bit lonely. Right, let's get these paints to the painting table and see what we can do. First we'll grab some test miniatures, any will do, then let's prime them up nice and simply using Army Painter's matte white. And then finally it's just a case of painting up the new Blinding Light, which applies just the same as the original speed paints, nice and easily to the miniature. And then with the second miniature we'll apply Holy White so everyone else can see why I don't get on with it quite as well. And then third and finally we'll take the last miniature and apply the Apothecary contrast white so we can have a look at all three of these whites, see how they compare, and dare I say it, contrast. Well, here we are. All paint applied and all paint dried. I've also included a plain matte white primed miniature so that we can, see what these little fellas looked like before I coated them all in paint and give you a good base of comparison. Now, we're all going to see these colours slightly differently and we're all going to have different tastes. This bit's going to be very subjective and ultimately you don't need me to tell you what's good and what's bad, but let me do that anyway. This new Blinding Light seems to be leagues above Holy White in both brightness and whiteness. I think Army Painter have maybe toned down at least ever so slightly from our original formula, our original mix, but nevertheless it's crazy white compared to, the original speed paint, the Holy White. Now this new white is slightly blue, albeit light and muted, but it is kind of obvious in the shadows. It's got that blue hue to it. The paint overall, it just rolls off those raised parts of the miniature a lot harder than Holy White ever did, which gives it a much better white highlighting. Let's compare it to the contrast white next. Now these two are a lot closer in colour. Again, this will be fairly subjective, but to me, right here, right now, it's very close. Originally, actually, my house, under the normal downlights, just everyday living, I actually thought the contrast white was still the whiter choice, but upon recording this video and taking the footage, taking pictures and having it under my daylight bulbs for painting, I'm actually very sure that Blinding Light is the whitest. The contrast does still offer a slightly warmer shadow, and that can be quite useful under certain scenarios and preferences to different people. And I'm actually really glad that I now own all three options and have them available at any point I need them. And I'll definitely use them at the right time and the right place, but Blinding Light has become instantly, it's jumped up there to be a sure favourite white for me in the single coat of paint space, which is absolutely fantastic news to see this production paint come into existence, knowing it was an area that I think was heavily missing in the original speed paints. I would always fall back to using contrast white for painting white, and now I'm going to save so much time and energy not having to go to another drawer to get out the contrast white. I didn't want to just leave it there. Another quick test I wanted to try was adding some speed paint medium to this Blinding Light, so I've gone for a 3:1 medium to paint ratio, so it's kind of medium-y, and I've just slapped
"What's up, slappers?"
that on the back of this miniature. And you can see at this ratio you really are left with a very white, and it's got the most subtle of shadows. I think this is actually a lot closer to the original colour, the original formula we designed for Army Painter. But having said that, I think it's actually a lot better what we've ended up with, because the paint can always be thinned down, just like in this example. We can always lighten it up by adding medium. But if had it been too light, it's not easy peasy lemony squeezy to darken down a speed paint, as we know from messing around with all the pigments. That's it. It's just adding black pigment and some medium together. Making paints ain't that hard. I think they've made the right decision making it a little bit darker than we designed, and I'm very happy with what they've come up with. Anyway, I thought that was a fairly decent quick example of how we can change the colour with just a splash of medium. The next couple of things I want to demonstrate in this video are some fully painted miniatures, with the bulk of the paint jobs actually being white and specifically blinding light. Test miniatures, I find, never tell the full story. They only give you a kind of glimpse. They only really give you a glimpse. Oh my god, glimpse. They only really give you a glimpse into what can be achieved. Plus, the white is going to look quite different against different colours next to them. It's how both colour and light works. If you're subscribed to the channel, you will have already seen this white scar little guy last week in the video. And if you're not subscribed, why not? Now, I've wanted to do a white scar tutorial on the channel since Contrast came out, but I was never happy enough with the Apoca 3 white contrast paint that we had available. Then, once Speedpaint was released and Holy White landed, I wanted to do it again, but I was even less happy with this white option. The tutorial last week was hopefully a testimonial to how happy I finally am that Blinding Light has arrived. Years in the waiting, but now we have a white scar, incredibly fast paint job complete, and this miniature looks great on the table. And the final miniature I want to show you is another that I've had primed, I think this is like 4 to 5 years. I kept looking at it to paint. I wanted to paint it, but I always kept feeling like my paint set wasn't quite ready for what I wanted to achieve, and more importantly, how fast I wanted to achieve it. With Blinding Light's arrival and all the new pastel colours available in the 2.0 set, I knew the time was here. A quick hour later and a really enjoyable and easy paint job. That's important to note how enjoyable and easy this paint is to work with, but Chromatis is coloured and ready to gallop. I'll just quickly show you the speed painted version against the alive and kicking version I did absolutely years ago using traditional acrylic paints. It took absolutely ages to paint. It was really hard to do. White is an utter bitch. While I'm still really happy with the original paint job, I still have a little bit of PTSD from trying to get the white to the level I was pleased with, and that gap in his neck, I didn't fix it before I was painting. I didn't really notice it. After I finished painting, it's very evident it's got a big gap that needed filling. But as much as I hated that gap, I didn't hate it as much as the prospect of having to touch that white back up after I retroactively fixed his neck. Hence, he is how he is. I actually fixed the undead version mid-paint job. I noticed the same, or similar, it wasn't exactly the same gap, and I didn't even bat an eyelid. I just filled it, reprimed that little bit, and I just knew the speed paint would have me covered with a very quick touch-up. There we have it, guys. The paint tried and compared to the other go-to versions of white paints that I have available. I'm over the moon with our involvement in creating this paint, and the gap, I truly believe, has been filled now. What do you guys think? Which is your favourite of the whites, and are you glad to see Blinding Light's arrival? Finally, do you use any other brands of these kind of single coat paints, and what do you think to their whites? Thank you ever so much for watching, and go and paint it. Go and watch it, paint it, go and paint something. Bye-bye.
Oh, I'm just a sweet little unicorn. Oh, I'd like to eat some grass. I better come over here. It looks pretty delicious over here. Nom, 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 nom.
Oh my goodness, what is this? What sort of beast is that?
I've seen it.
Oh my god, what's that?
Nom, 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 nom.